Another day and another episode of All Steelers quarterback talk all the time. Because I don't think we're getting to these free agent safeties today. I'm sorry. I know I hinted at it during yesterday's show that we would talk about free agent safeties for the Steelers to target, but nah, I just think we're talking quarterbacks. In fact, we're going to be talking about all three of the Steeler quarterbacks that were on the roster last season because there is news pertaining to each of them. And it's probably good. We'll push back the safety talk till tomorrow because more news just dropped recently. Keanu Neal got released, and then Justin Simmons got released by the Broncos. So there are a plethora of safeties out there. And with the Steelers cutting Keanu Neal, I'm assuming that is going to take some sort of priority whenever you're talking about free agent targets and what positions that they're going to be looking at, because right now all we got's Minkah Fitzpatrick and DeMonte Casey. Miles Killebrew if you want to throw him in the mix, but we know he's more of a special teams ace. So we're missing some guys at the safety position. And there are a lot of talented dudes out there that we could use and pair next to Minkah. And I don't even know if we're going to be keeping Casey. I don't even know that. Maybe we'll keep him around, and if we sign one of the more high-profile dudes that are out there, maybe Casey becomes the third safety like he was his first year here in Pittsburgh when we still had Terrell Edmunds. But I'll talk about that more tomorrow. To start, let's get into some Kenny Pickett news. This one's interesting. Aditi Kinkawala was on 93.7 The Fan yesterday. We know she is a reporter for not just the Steelers, but all of the AFC North. So she hopped on with Filipponi and Mueller yesterday and had some things to say about Pickett, had some inside scoops on what some of the coaches are thinking behind the scenes. So she says there was a lot of chatter at the combine doubting Kenny Pickett. And I'll tell you this, multiple new members of this staff felt so charged, sort of so angered by that there's most definitely a personal investment in seeing him succeed. I spoke to 4 separate staff members who all said it only makes them feel that much more strongly that they want to see Kenny succeed. Yeah, I'm at that point too, to be honest. I've had enough of the bashing of Kenny Pickett. I've had enough of the takes that say we desperately need an outside quarterback to be successful next season. If Kenny is who I think he is, and more importantly, who the organization thinks he is, drafting him back a couple years ago in the first round, if they still believe in him like that, then why the hell do we need to bring in a 36-year-old Russell Wilson who the Broncos are paying to stay away from their team? Paying a sizable amount of money to stay away from their team. Why do we got to go through all that? Or even why do we got to trade assets for a Justin Fields? If Kenny is who we think he is, and when I say we, I'm talking about me and a small pocket of Steeler fans that are still out there that still thinks Kenny can be a legit quarterback in this league, and the Steelers organization, Con, Rooney, and Tomlin. That's what I'm talking about with we, because about 90 to 95% of you guys out there have written Kenny off, have closed the door on him. Does Kenny need competition? Yes. Does he got to earn his spot? Yes. But my solution to that is bringing back Mason and having Mason and Kenny compete, because we saw what Mason did in those last 4 games of 2023. He was playing like a top 10 quarterback. So if he can keep that up, he'll beat out Kenny in the offseason. And yeah, he'd play like that for the rest of the season. And in a perfect world, right? He'd play like those last 4 games of 2023 and all of 2024. And that's a top 10 quarterback. There you go. You got your guy. It doesn't matter necessarily how you get your guy, but it would be Mason Rudolph, to much of our surprise. So you don't have to bring in a Russell Wilson with a big name who could shake things up from a power perspective, but may not be the player that he once was. Like, there's a lot that goes into bringing in a Russell Wilson, and he may not be the Russell Wilson of old. So there's a little bit of a risk there. With Mason, there's literally no risk. Absolutely no risk. Just all upside. if he could continue doing what he did at the end of 2023, that's a top 10 quarterback. But what's the risk? Paying him a few $1,000,000 on a 1 or 2 year deal? Russell Wilson, you're potentially shaking up your organization. You could be shifting the power dynamics. And for how long, too? How much more does Russ have left? Is it worth it? Or you could re-sign Mason and stick with a guy who has won you games early in his career, and Kenny Pickett, who's been around for a lot of winning over the last 16 or 17 games that he has started and finished. I'll get to that stat a little bit later. And is still young in his career. Maybe you just go with that as opposed to bringing in a Russell Wilson. And I get it. It is enticing. I would understand. I brought that up how many times? I would understand if the Steelers did it because it is Russell Wilson and he would be getting a very, very affordable contract. You'd be getting him at a very, very cheap rate. But maybe we got the solution right in front of us in a Kenny. And bringing back the guy that we're very familiar with in Mason Rudolph. And then same thing goes with Justin Fields. You got to go through all this of giving up assets, second-round pick, worrying about a fifth-year option, locking him in for another year, sight unseen, $20+ million, where I'd argue he's just as uncertain, if not more uncertain, than Kenny and Mason. We could have that argument, but that's more for another day. I'll just put it to you this way. When talking about Mason Rudolph versus Fields, I'll take Kenny over Fields. He's won more games. I think he's done more to contribute to his team winning. And then with Mason, I know small sample size. I haven't seen Justin Fields do what Mason did over those 4 games when we saw Mason start with the Steelers last year. I haven't seen Fields do anything like that at the quarterback position up to this point. So why am I trading a draft pick and, doing the potentially the fifth-year option stuff? Even if you don't do the fifth-year option, you're trading, a second-round pick for a 1-year rental, potentially, who, again, is just as uncertain, if not more uncertain, than a Kenny and a Mason. I'd rather spend that second-round pick on, Jeremiah Trotter or a dope cornerback to pair with JPJ or a Zach Frazier. I'd rather do that. But back to Kenny. A lot of people do wonder with him, are we ever going to reach the next level with him? Are we ever going to get back to the Steelers standard with him of excellence? So he's only 2 years in to his Steeler career thus far. And I think everyone wants to just put all of the lack of playoff success over these last 2 years when he was here all on him. But want to forget that he was a big part of the reason why we even had a chance at the playoffs in his rookie year. Team went 7-2 down the stretch. And if Kenny didn't get hurt in that Ravens game, we probably do make the playoffs. And that would have been interesting. I still want to see what Kenny could do in those type of moments. Because we have seen adversity, big moments aren't too big for him. Last year, we're sitting at 7-4 with him being the starter before he gets hurt in that Cardinals game. Well in the playoff picture, but we don't get to see him again for the rest of the season. So we haven't even seen Kenny Pickett in a playoff game. But I feel like people are just making it seem like all the negative, all the negative that has surrounded this team over the last couple of years since we moved on from Ben, it's just all being lumped on Kenny Pickett. Despite him doing good things to get us in good spots. I get it. He's the quarterback. He's going to get a lot of blame, a lot of credit. Over the last, I get it. About this team and making Pickett escape. Whatever, he's the quarterback. He's the quarterback. I get it. He's going to get a lot of credit. You look at the last 16 games, he's both started and finished. Last 16 games since that bye week of his rookie year in 2022. The team is 13-3. I'll even say 13-4. I'll include that Houston Texans game because Kenny didn't finish the game, but when he got hurt and Mitch had to come in, the game was out of bounds. So let's just go with a clean 13-4, because that's 17 total games, and that's what a full regular season is in the NFL nowadays. 13-4 in games that the man has both started and finished. But apparently that record is all in spite of Kenny. Apparently, Kenny didn't outplay the likes of Jordan Love and Matthew Stafford and Deshaun Watson over that time period. Apparently, Kenny doesn't have the second most game-winning drives in the NFL over the course of that time period. Apparently, not turning the ball over has nothing to do with a team winning. I think Kenny has 5 turnovers over the course of those 17 games, a total of 5 turnovers. And also, apparently, fourth quarter quarterback rating of over 100 holds a team back. This is all news to me. Does Kenny need to be better? Yes, I have admitted that many, many times. But let's not knock the good things the man did and how he contributed to the team winning. Because if you want to say the winning had nothing to do with Kenny, then why is Mitch Trubisky's record with the Steelers so bad? Tell me this, if Mitch Trubisky had been the starter, the complete starter over the course of these last 2 years, does Mike Tomlin still have his non-losing seasons record? Ask yourselves that. I'd be curious because I don't think Tomlin would have that record. Now, a lot of people would be happy about that because they think that's the Steelers standard these days. It's not. Like, I don't think anyone's satisfied with where we've been at over the last 4 or 5 years. But Kenny's doing something, right? He's been doing something good for this team over the last year and a half. 13-4 record with him as the starter whenever he starts and finishes games. That can't be just a complete coincidence, no? Again, he's got to be better. But that's why I actually want to see him for a third year. If he could take some of this good stuff we've seen from him and combine it with development, we might have our franchise answer right there. For everything I've said about Mason, can he duplicate those last 4 games? Yeah, we would have our franchise answer right there. Same thing could be said for Kenny going into his third year. Doesn't feel like it's that crazy. And if it's us wasting a season, like everyone says by having Pickett back as the quarterback for 2024, then isn't that a good thing, right? Isn't that what everyone wants? At least by the way that you guys describe Pickett, because if Pickett's out there, man, he's the worst quarterback in the league. We're probably going to go 0-17, and we'll get the first pick in next year's draft. And won't that lead to the necessary changes, the foundation changes that this organization needs to go through to get us to that next level, to get us back to the glory days, right? Wouldn't that be the necessary change if, we tank or we throw Pickett out there and he sucks and the team's terrible and it's a wasted season? Wouldn't that not be a wasted season? Because then we can get an early pick in the draft and get a new quarterback and all that. But that's the thing. We all know that's not going to happen because Pickett ain't as bad as people give him credit for. Or you might say it's a waste because we'll just go 9-8 or 10-7 and get bounced in the playoffs. And, that's that. That's been the Steeler way as of late. Yeah, it's not going to feel good. I'll tell you that. It's not going to feel good. But give me the guarantee at quarterback from all the options that are available that will get us over that hump. No doubt about it. Joe Burrow ain't coming in here. Justin Herbert ain't coming in here. We're talking about a Russell Wilson. We're talking about a Kirk Cousins. We're talking about a Kirk Cousins coming off an Achilles that's going to cost you $30-35 million. We're talking about trading for a Justin Fields. You're talking about Sam Darnold, Ryan Tannehill being out there. There's no guaranteed top 5 or 6 guy coming in on the snap of a finger like that. So maybe, just maybe, we can be a little bit patient and say to ourselves, hey, last year might have been the outlier year for Pickett. It was kind of odd. And it's not out of question that he could take the good attributes he's already shown us and develop into something more sustainable going into his third year. His third year. There's a lot of quarterbacks out there that haven't had it all click until their third year. Josh Allen's an example. I could probably go through a list of other examples, but I didn't do that research before hopping on. You guys know what I'm saying, though. So it doesn't sound that crazy, right? A dude that's only 2 years in, that's only really played a year and a half's worth of games. A guy that has been delivering wins whenever he's the starting quarterback. Like, it's not that crazy that he could have some things click in year 3, right? Not that crazy. So I don't blame myself or the Steelers for wanting to see it just for one more year, just to make sure. Just to make sure, no? So I'm with the coaches. Again, I'm with the coaches at this point. Forget the outside quarterbacks. Let's roll with Kenny because the hate it's just gone too far, man. It's gone too far. And I get what they're saying. Like, if you're just gonna keep bashing and bashing and bashing, at some point, you're gonna get defensive and say, like, nah. Actually, no. Let me prove to you why he's gonna be better than everyone is thinking right now. What all you guys are saying. Let me prove to you. So forget the outside QBs. Roll with Kenny. Re-sign Mason. I think we're on our way. But on to Mason. Got a couple reports on him yesterday. Aditi, again on 93.7 The Fan. Not only was talking about Pickett, but also Rudolph. And the topic of whether or not he'll likely sign back in Pittsburgh was brought up. She says it certainly sounds like it. The team has made it very clear that they would like him back. Now, Jerry Dulac also had his own report on Mason Rudolph, and he had a little market gauge on him. What does he think the contract's going to be? And he says there's not necessarily a mad rush for him around the league. He doesn't necessarily have this desperate, deep desire or urgency to go play elsewhere. And the team has made it very clear that it wants him back. It's one of those all signs point to the North Pole. Yeah, so if you combine these two reports together, Mason's likely coming back. He's coming back. Dulac also said he thinks the offer will be something in the line of 2 years, $10 million total, so about $5 million a piece. What other team has given him that? I just can't see it. I don't see it. I could see a team giving him like 1 year, $3 or $4 million, but 2 years, $10 million? I think that's decent. That's a big upgrade from what he was getting just last year. He was on like the vet minimum here in Pittsburgh. I don't think that's what he wants necessarily, but you can't always get what you want. It's all about what the market is dictating. Like, I'm sure he would want, $20 million. He's probably thinking to himself, like, yo, I proved I could play in this league from those 4 games last year. Like, and I was playing damn good. That's at least a $20 million type of quarterback. But I don't think many teams are willing to take that chance on a dude that's been a virtual journeyman in this league over the last 6 years. Even though he hasn't been a journeyman, he's been with the Steelers. He's been viewed as that, essentially. He's been viewed as expendable. So I think it makes sense for both sides. It goes hand in hand with everything I was just saying in that whole Kenny Pickett, Mason Rudolph monologue. And, do we stick with the guys inside versus going for the outside quarterbacks? That whole thing I was just saying that. I think it goes hand in hand. Makes sense for the team. I think it can make sense for Mason because, too, the Steelers, I'm going to keep saying this. I've said it over the last month. I think the Steelers give Mason Rudolph the best chance to start. He wants to be a starter in this league. He got the taste of it at the end of 2023. He wants to be a starter. What other team's going to actually give him a legitimate competition? And I guess it could be up in the air whether or not the Steelers give Mason a legit competition this offseason. It will be a competition. Will they favor Kenny? Who knows? I know a lot of us are thinking that. But there also is a regular season to be played. Kenny could go into next year and stink it up. If he stinks it up, then that's why signing Mason Rudolph is good value for the Steelers, is a smart move. If Kenny doesn't play good coming out the gates the first 3 or 4 weeks, then you put Mason in. we saw what Mason could do last year. He's very capable. I don't think it's a lost season at all. It goes back to everything I said at the beginning here. Rolling with Kenny and rolling with Mason is not a lost season. You mean to tell me if Kenny botches some stuff up first month and we throw in Mason, the season's lost? No, I don't think that at all. I don't want it to get to that point. No, I'm not like, oh, yeah, this is great. This is dandy. I'm interested to see what Mason can do. I am. I get there is some uncertainty with that. But dude proved a lot to me last year. I don't know about you guys. He proved a lot because there was a lot of stakes on the line when he stepped in that Cincy game at home right around Christmas. A lot of stakes on the line. Steelers season and his career. But then he backed it up the next game in Seattle. Backed it up again against the Ravens. Season still on the line in all those circumstances. Then went on the road against Buffalo. I know it wasn't perfect. Team had some turnovers. One of them was because of Mason in the red zone. But battled back, got us within one score in that fourth quarter. Battled back, went toe-to-toe with Allen in the second half, man. Like, played damn good in the playoffs. That's why I'm intrigued by him. That's why I don't think we got to bring in anyone from the outside. I don't think we got to take some of these risks of getting a Russell Wilson in here. Or, again, some people might not think it's a risk because of the contract, but going back to like the power dynamics and where he's at age-wise, could be a little bit of a risk. And then with Justin Fields, you're risking giving up draft picks, assets, fifth-year option, cap space. I think we would just do fine by having Pickett, who's already on the roster right now, and Mason. I think we do just fine by that. So, yeah, I like this report. I do like this report. I hope he's back, and we'll see how the offseason plays out if it is Kenny versus Mason. But then last thing for today, let's go for the trifecta. Again, we're talking about all three of the Steeler quarterbacks that were on the team in 2023. Mitch Trubisky made some headlines yesterday because he's going back to Buffalo. The team that picked him up after his stint with Chicago was over, brought him on as a backup to Josh Allen, built up his stock a little bit in that, down year where he could just be quiet. Yeah, he's going back there because after Buffalo, he signed here with the Steelers. We know how that went over the last 2 years. We don't really need to get into all that. But I think that makes sense for Mitch. I think it does. I think Buffalo likes him. I think Bills fans and probably even the Bills organization have fonder memories of Mitch the player because I got nothing bad to say about Mitch the person or Mitch the professional or even just Mitch the Steeler. Dude was a class act here. Couldn't ask more from him from a professional standpoint and how he handled himself. But on the field, yeah, we needed more. And that's why ultimately he was cut by us because I think there was a disconnect at the end of last season. I don't think the trust was fully there with Mitch. Like I don't think we could trot him back out there. Tomlin said it in the one press conference after the Colts game that a couple of the decisions Mitch made, he's like, yeah, I wasn't planning on him doing that. I don't think I was coaching him to do that right there. We need to get points, but, this happened, that happened. And I just don't think there's a trust there between Tomlin, the organization, and Mitch. Even if we kept him around to be QB3, if for whatever reason we had to rely on him, yeah, I just don't think they have that much faith in Mitch like that. But I still think Mitch is a quality backup in this league. Like I still think he's probably ahead of at least half the league as a QB2. So he's an upgrade for Buffalo over what they have. And I think it makes sense. Yeah, he's going to keep his career going. And, yeah, maybe now he just turns into career backup, a la Chase Daniel and keeps cashing them checks. So, makes sense. Don't really have too much more to add to this move right here. But I'll just, I think, let that be the closing topic for today then. I think that'll be it. We'll talk about safeties tomorrow. And, yeah, let me know your thoughts on everything discussed today on this edition of Again, I don't even know what we want to call this. Deke Talks Football. But stay chillin' and peace.